Hi, everybody. Erica from In the Company of Cards. Welcome to Sunday Conversations. I know I have my Friday outfit on. Sorry, but it's recorded. So what can I say? I know you like to comment on my sweaters. Okay, there you go. So this time we have a repeat guest coming to us, Laurie Farrington. She is an astrologer, a beautiful writer, and has just written a book, which I will hold up, How to Read and Interpret a Birth Chart. You can get it anywhere. I'm filming this on Friday. So, of course, Friday is no buy Friday. So don't buy it today, but maybe put it on your wish list and then pick it up tomorrow. Um, and she would like to come and talk to us about what's coming up in March, sort of astrologically, specifically in reference to 47 and what's going on around him. So I will give you the floor, Lori, and not, well, I will ask questions because you all know I like to ask questions, but Laurie Farrington, welcome.
Welcome. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited to be back
Glad to have you.
having a conversation with you. Um, I think I want to start just by saying I listen to you every day almost, and I really have just am intrigued with your take on all of what you talk about. As I have listened to you and you've talked about Pluto's movement into Aquarius a number of times, which is such a significant transit, and all of us should know where that is happening in our own natal charts. And as I heard you repeatedly bring that up, I finally decided that I wanted to look at 47's chart. I
Mhm.
have avoided looking at his chart because I don't like looking at people's charts that, yeah, I have this opinion of. But
Yeah.
I finally did. I pulled up his chart, and because basically I wanted to see where Pluto was in its movement into Aquarius, where that was impacting him. For those of you who do know astrology that are listening to me, I want to let you know, if you don't know my work at all, that I do use whole sign house system. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, it doesn't matter. If it does, it does. So the movement of Pluto into Aquarius has brought Pluto into his seventh house. Seventh house, people generally tend to think of it as relationship, our spouse or our partner. It's also other people. In the case of someone with such a large public platform, it is the people.
People.
And Pluto, you want to think about Pluto's job. Pluto's job basically is to empower us in the area where it's moving. So Pluto's job would be to empower his connection with the populace, with the people. However, Pluto is going to destroy whatever is in the way of that empowerment. What does that make you think of?
Well, that doesn't sound good. Look, if Pluto, and again, you all, I pretend that I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't when it comes to astrology. But if Pluto is meant to empower his connection to the people, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And and gets in the way of, okay, so let me say what I think. And gets in the way, I mean, will destroy anything that gets in the way of that. Here's my question. We know what his image is. We know what he would like us to think his image is, but that's not actually who he is in relation to the people. So, would it be that Pluto is saying, forget all of that subterfuge and fluff and showmanship and all that other BS? This people is who he really is. Is that right?
Yeah, tearing off the mask, so to speak.
Okay,
The
got
other thing that the seventh house relates to is open enemies.
Oh,
Yeah. That's an interesting one to think about. Pluto moving into the seventh house is going to tell us, among all these other things, that some incredible power is coming into his life at the hands of a new partner, an open enemy. It could go either way. Some person in his sphere is going to profoundly make a major
Well,
impact.
okay, so let me ask this. If if Pluto is meant to empower his what? His relationship.
Relationships.
Okay, but empower and make bare are not the same thing.
In order for Pluto to do the job of empowerment, it is going to destroy what's in the way. Okay.
But
So,
what's in the way from my perspective, and I mean,
in
and
the
that's
way
the
is
thing, but my perspective is not necessarily everybody's perspective,
right.
right? I think he is a carnival barker,
Yes.
grifter. That's what I think. Now, there are a lot of people who don't think that.
Right.
So if Pluto's going to come in and sort of empower, see, that's the word that's catching me up. Empower his relationship to the people. He would view that one way. I would view that a different way.
So here, let me throw something else in. When I see that Pluto going into his seventh house, what I think of is Musk, a powerful person coming in that is changing, that's kind of sweeping the space clear, is really, destroying his relationships.
Yeah. So what is that empowering?
The ultimate result. Pluto is a very slow moving planet. It's not going to do the empowerment in the fullness of time.
I don't
As
know why that thumb is there. Do you see that?
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Okay. So
It's
it's a
some
slow,
study.
it's slow.
Yeah, Pluto's the slowest moving planet. So the fact that it is now in Aquarius and it's now in this area, it's doing a job on there. It's like pushing things out of the way.
Is this
Um,
a 40-year transit?
this is Pluto will remain in Aquarius until 2043.
Oh, so like a 20 something
Right,
year
right.
transit. Okay.
So, what we hope for when Pluto moves into a certain area is empowerment. But we've got to look at our own, how we've set the table. If we are in integrity and things are as they ought to be, then our relationships will be empowered. If we are, you know,
Like him.
like him, what's going to happen? Some powerful person's going to come in, offer a gazillion dollars to help his campaign, and essentially destroy whatever could have been there in the longer term.
And what is it empowering then?
It's not empowering anything until it does all the destruction and leaves things bare for something new to begin in the fullness of time.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I caught you up with that word
No,
empowerment.
no, no, but that yeah, that's good. I mean, because in the fullness of time, ideally, we would look back on this set thing, this whole whatever, and say, "Oh my God, what was that? What was that? What happened? How did we allow ourselves to get in the fullness of time?" And we see him through a very clear lens, where we're now seeing him through a glass darkly. We will see him and if you're thinking in a really broad karmic kind of way, um, that kind of clarity is is empowering for the sake of his soul, the soul of the nation, and the soul of each of us, to be able to see a picture clearly instead of in an unmuddied way. So, because in other words, for him, empowerment would feel like, yeah,
Oh,
let's keep tap dancing and let's keep dangling carrots and let's keep
right.
let me continue to be the barker, the show barker. But real empowerment is for him to see himself as he really is, for us to see him as he really is, for us to see ourselves as we really are, such that we allowed this to happen in the first place. Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I really want to talk about, because Pluto is doing that thing in his seventh house, so there's that impact. The other thing that's really, really interesting going on with him currently is that the planet Uranus is exactly conjunct his midheaven, which is the most public spot in the chart. It's, people think of it as the career, the vocation, or the social reputation. It's the most public piece of the chart. And Uranus sitting on it is, in essence, um, it's finishing. One of the things that I was thinking about is that it's closing down a cycle.
Well, what does Uranus generally do?
Uranus's job is to wake us up,
Okay,
to
got it.
shock us awake.
Think of Eureka, you guys. Eureka, Uranus, you'll never
Yeah.
forget. Okay.
Yeah. Uranus is a fascinating planet. It's got two sides to it, like all of them do. It's got the excitement side or the anxiety side. But really, what Uranus does is it wakes us up. I think of it as you put your fingers in a light socket and everything changes in a minute. You see something you cannot unsee. Shocking things occur
Okay.
when Uranus comes along. So Uranus is actually has been, because it's a very, very slow moving planet. And uh it takes a fair amount of time to go back and forth. Let me see. I wrote the dates down. I have them right here. Um, okay, so Uranus conjunct his ascendant first, it started last summer. The final point of it, it does the retrograde. So there's three passes of it. The final one is in March.
Okay.
So
Oh,
that's the culmination. It's like a new cycle begins at this point, a new cycle of waking up to who he is in a public view. It's shocking, explosive something.
mm,
You know, it there's so, it's sort of like I think of it when you read your cards, like there's different ways that you can see this.
mhm.
I mean, Uranus coming to someone's midheaven could result in, the biggest explosion of their popularity and, everyone, it could bring just a huge culmination, but it also could just blow it all sky high.
Well, I'm voting for option number two in this
I'm
case.
voting for option number two. And there's also a piece that the closing down of a cycle, which is what this is, really, it's not a triumph. It's the consequences come from the whole cycle.
Could he be, I mean, I'm not trying to be sensationalist. Is that part of why we are seeing, because I see it in my cards as well, I've been saying it for months, that his physical life is in at risk?
Um, it certainly could. He's coming close to his Uranus return, which will happen in a couple of years down the line, which is, I mean, he's an old man,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And Uranus certainly can create those kind of shocks. I mean, I think of, the attempts on his life were part of this Uranus. Definitely. His getting elected was part of it. Those two events were definitely part of it. But there's more coming. We're not done with the shocks
Mhm.
that he is bringing to a public view. You can also think of it that, um, this is part of a cycle. I went through and tracked the whole cycle for him.
Mhm.
The different periods of time where Uranus was impacting his midheaven. And it was interesting. The first time he got a Uranus hit to his midheaven was when he was in military academy. And we've all heard stories
Yeah.
about what kind of a person he was there. And,
Mhm.
it was like that was the beginning of him really understanding how he could use his power in such an ugly way. The next time was in 1980, which was his first major real estate um, pieces that he put into place. And then the next time was in 2001, which was the branding of his name and Trump Tower and all of that. These are all times when he's very much in the public eye in this big way. But this one, because it's the final one, it
Ooh.
starts a new cycle. It's sort of, you can think of it as that this is a reckoning. It's not a triumph.
Yeah, let the
Yeah, it's a reckoning, a time of dealing with the consequences from all those other times.
interesting.
So, yeah, that's the most interesting thing. There's a lot of other things.
Oh, wait, so that's you're talking about Saturn on his midheaven.
No, Uranus.
I mean Uranus, yeah,
Yeah,
Uranus. Okay, I'm
yeah.
writing it down. Okay. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, and then right after it kind of goes on because Uranus conjuncts his midheaven, and then it squares his Mars and his ascendant. So
Mhm.
it's like it is putting so much pressure on him right now. He has got to be under a tremendous amount of anxiety. And the square to Mars and ascendant, that's where I can imagine health issues coming in.
Health issues like, for example, belligerence that leads to like a heart attack or a stroke, like he implodes.
Yeah, he's got Mars on his ascendant in his natal chart in Leo. I mean, Mars in Leo, I love Mars in Leo. I think it's a great placement for Mars. But, for someone with this kind of ego, Mars right on the ascendant in Leo is real. I mean, you see him, and if you know much astrology, you can see that Mars in Leo is right there. And that is also being in a stressful
Mhm,
position impacted by Uranus.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's like, yeah, I think it's definitely a dangerous time for
Can
him.
you give it a time frame? Because I mean, my cards tell me that I would say from March 14th, from the middle of March uh, till maybe the end of April or a little bit before that, that's a
Well,
really fraught time for him.
these bigger transits, these bigger, slower moving planets have such a span of time.
Mm,
It's like a year, it goes back and forth.
mm.
But there are other transits that are going on that, well,
Oh,
the Mars is thought of as triggering things. And
mhm,
he definitely has some very strong triggers in April with
mhm.
Mars. He's got some other strong triggers, a little farther down. I think, June 11th,
Oh,
June 17th, those are really um, stressful times that you're going to see him either in more of a rage than usual
mhm,
or something else being triggered off around health. I
mhm.
would think those periods of time. He also, in March, he has Saturn transits really pressing on both his sun and his moon. And these are times of feeling restricted. For most of us, Saturn transits when we're young can be very difficult. We feel restricted, we feel misunderstood, we all of that stuff. As we get older, we kind of mature and learn how to, maturity really helps with Saturn transits. This
So
one
when you
has
say
never developed any
so when you
maturity.
say Saturn transit, so like for example, a Saturn return that people talk about happening like when you're 28, and that tends to really move you from whatever you were to adulthood. because
Yes,
you must go through some things that
right,
force you into that space.
right,
Correct. Okay.
right. That's the Saturn return. What he has going on with Saturn is pushing in a challenging way on both the core of who he is, his sun, and his emotional nature, the moon.
Well, rah, 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 Saturn. That's all I got to say about
Yeah.
that.
And yeah, you could track those times back. He became president when Saturn was conjunct his moon.
And
That's
conjuncting is a good thing.
conjuncting, it's not either. It's the beginning of a process.
Okay. Okay.
He began, his first presidency with Saturn conjunct his moon. Now at the first quarter square where it is like something has to change from what began then. Something has to, and there's stress involved in it. This is definitely a very, very stressful time. The exact dates that you talked about, I don't have anything that points to those exact dates. Some other astrologers might. When I look at this, I really kept it to the major aspects. Some
Mhm.
people use other minor aspects that might show up something, but I would think, yeah, and timing with astrology is a little tricky. It's
Well,
never
as it is
exact.
with all of this kind of work,
Right.
because it's
Right.
Chronos and Kairos, and with astrology, it's quite the combination of, Chronos and Kairos. So I
Oh,
guess we can say that starting in the spring,
yeah, yeah.
moving forward, it will be a difficult
It's
period.
an incredible period of time this spring.
Yeah.
All of the outer planets are changing signs. There's so much, he has been in this period of time for the past 2.5 years or so, with Saturn moving through his eighth house. There's been a real struggle for him in learning how to, or working, or trying to figure out how to manage other people's stuff, other people's values. He's trying to be the dude and tell everybody how to be,
Right.
but there's pressure there.
Is there
That
ever I'm showing my ignorance, but I'm kind of trying to show off that I know the term. Is there a shadow period for all of this to happen, like prior to?
there's a shadow. When you hear people talk about a shadow period, that's to a retrograde.
Okay.
That's
The
when a
reason that
planet
I
goes
ask, well,
retrograde.
the reason that I ask is that, he has certainly in his first presidency, he was the guy in charge. I mean, he's just sitting there like a puppet.
That's Pluto in the seventh house. There's someone else, that relationship, that, open enemies or frenemies.
Yeah.
This Musk guy's no friend of
He's no
his.
friend of his. No. He
No.
owns him, is what it is. He owns
Yeah.
him.
And I think that's very much part of that Pluto in the seventh house,
Mhm.
along with the destruction of how people view him.
Right.
The
Right.
Venus,
So the reason that I asked about this, the shadow, but obviously that's not technical, it's more metaphorical. It feels like it's a foretaste of things. When you've got Musk kind of not even lurking over his shoulder, but like standing in front of him, and he doesn't know, I mean, he just doesn't know what to do about it.
yeah, 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 he really doesn't. And Venus is also getting ready to go retrograde,
Okay.
which is a period of time. And I didn't even write the dates down, but Venus is going to be retrograde for a period of time. All of us, and even him, we all really need to rethink and rework our own personal values. This is such a powerful time for us to get in tune with what we really do value. Um, this guy's wiped off the table so much of what makes us want to be here. Let's put it that way. this country is just going down the tubes with him and Musk.
You talked about
Although,
things being uncovered and shown. One of the things that I see, I mean, I kind of knew it, but there's no way to avoid seeing it now, is the degree to which this country um, worships money.
mhm,
Now, we also know that 47 worships money. I think money is more important to him than
mm,
probably anything. And so when you just talked just now about Venus and our having to figure out what it is that we value. Um, he may have some decisions to make about, well, what is it I really value? I mean, I think the answer is still money.
yeah.
Um, and that if he has having to sort of rethink that and comes down on the same side, yeah, money is it. Well, all kinds of things could flow from that. So, for example, I see that there is a possibility of him being offered an option. Either you take this money and face no criminal anything, because of course he's got the whole Justice Department and the FBI and everything, all those are all his people. So they can make that kind of a deal. So no prosecution for anything. Here's a boatload of money and go off and play golf. Or, and I don't know that they'll say this to his face because they probably wouldn't, but the option will be we'll 25th Amendment you. Now, who would have to 25th Amendment him?
It-
Vance and the
yeah.
majority of his cabinet. Now, if
His people.
Vance and his cabinet are being sideswiped at every opportunity by Musk, there's got to be a way for them to get rid of Musk because the Vance and Project 2025 people, that's one faction. Musk is his own faction with the other oligarchs. And then you've got MAGA over here. So I'm feeling like if he decides when Venus is whatever it is, if Venus it causes him to have to ask the same question that we're all going to be asked to answer, which is what do you value most? Uh, I suspect he'll say, yeah, give me the money. Give me the no prosecution. What
I
do you
don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, I money clearly is a big driver here, but I think his ego is a bigger driver.
Yeah, I think it's a toss up, but I think that the pro the carrot of no prosecution, which in his mind will mean that he's pure as the driven snow, and that the public will see him as pure as the driven snow because he's crazy. Um, Combined with money, which buys him whatever. Um, I mean, I think he thinks that money is equal to how much people like you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that. Even, astrologically, when you look at the natal chart, the second house is about money, resources, and self-worth.
Yeah,
When our bank accounts are empty, none of us feel great about ourselves. And
exactly.
there are some people who, there's no way they can ever fill that empty space
But
within themselves. So they
okay, but if
fill
the
it with,
option is to be 25th Amendmented, which I think he would realize, well, that wouldn't that be like the ultimate psychic wound to a narcissist like him
yeah,
to be metaphorically put in a straitjacket and carted off the stage? I mean, that would hit everything second house for him.
yeah, yeah. It definitely would. His second house is really interesting because he has Virgo in that house. He's got like, and it's interesting. I was looking at this, thinking about how he cannot seem to string together 10 words without telling a lie.
Right.
And it's almost as though the way it shows up in the chart, it's almost as though he doesn't even know he's lying. It's almost as
No,
though
but he
it's
does.
just how his mind works. His mind is so delusional
Well, he was trained by Roy Cohn, that lawyer that was part of the 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 witch hunts, so to speak, the Red Scare of McCarthy. But he was taught by Roy Cohn to never apologize, to never back down. And also, if you say something enough times, and I think there's actually even a number that he has in his head, X number of times, doesn't matter if what it is, people will believe it. Well, that people includes him. I think he's so lies, just as you say, just drip off his tongue. I really truly believe he believes in the moment all the things that he says.
I think he does too. The only aspect to his Mercury is a square to Neptune, which, you know, in some, don't look at your chart and see you've got that. So whoever's listening and think, oh my God, do I lie all the time? It's not like that. He could have trained that mind to be really imaginative in
Right,
beautiful ways,
right.
because that's the other, side of it. There's always different ways that you can use these things. I mean, his moon in Sagittarius could be a beautiful thing where emotionally he's open and explorative instead of stuck in this rigid place of my opinions are the only opinions that matter and, honor that.
Mhm.
Yeah, there really is a God complex in this chart. It's
Mhm.
really quite clear in the chart itself, the natal chart itself.
So, can we look at the country at all in regard to some of these?
Well, I don't have the chart of the country with me currently. I do know that, and it's been talked about a lot, that within the last few years, this country did come to its Pluto return.
Mhm.
Pluto takes 248 years to go around the cycle. We've come to the Pluto return.
Which is
And,
why the energy of this time feels like revolutionary energy.
right. Pluto comes along, it's like any full cycle. It comes to the end and it's over. The story preceding it is over and has to be started again. I think that, there's in the fullness of time we'll understand these things, but I do think that, this guy is doing something. He's providing a service of, okay, here I am, the dude to make the old cycle end and the new cycle begin.
Yes, I've okay. So I have heard that, and I think it's really important, at least for Americans, to put this in some perspective. I agree that we need certain catalysts in order to move us from where we have been to where we need to go. And I agree that he certainly is one of those catalysts. He is the great destroyer. That's his job, is to
Yeah.
destroy, not to create anything, but to destroy. I also will go so far as to say that on a soul level, he may have agreed to play that role. But that doesn't make him somebody that we want to get in line or to shake his hand and say, thank you for your service.
Oof.
Because 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 the way that this destruction has to happen, I guess, because people are hard-headed and it's for whatever reason can't take the easy way out. They couldn't take the medicine by mouth. They had to have the surgical incision and it's painful. Um, uh, I mean, it's like people who say that about the World War II. I've heard this that Hitler uh, played his part, and that people who died in the Holocaust also played theirs. That they chose to to play this sacrificial role so that people could see the inhumanity of man. I'm not buying into that. I am not subscribing to that. So don't anybody come for me in the comments because. But um, I mean, I think we have to be careful, right? Because uh, I think that it's tempting, probably as an astrologer or as anybody who does the work that we do, to think that we are not part of this story
Mm,
and to
mm.
say that we are sort of sitting at the right hand of God, like the Hunger Games, we're watching the board game that's all happening and we're not part of it, but we are part of it. We are all part of this matrix. Whoever we are, if we're in a human skin, we are also part of this matrix. And so I think that there will be temptation on the part of some people to say, oh, okay, well, so if that's his role, then let him play his role and les jeux sont faits, let it fall where they fall, let the chips fall. And
Yeah.
neglect to think about the fact that what should also be in the cards is a resistance against him
Yeah.
and his evil, right?
Yeah, I
Just
mean that's part
because,
of
yeah,
it. You can't just let it take over everything.
right.
Because that wouldn't make any sense. Yes, this moment in time calls for us to take what actions we can from the position we're sitting in, and to really, at this point, we all, and I think that's a lot of the message of this upcoming Venus retrograde is we really need to consider what is valuable to us, what is important for us to take on as our role in this. We have both Venus and Mercury going retrograde. This is going to be a time for us to really figure out what we're doing.
Well, it makes me think of, and I know I use this quote all the time, uh, but I've taught this play about, well, 30 years worth of teaching the play, The Crucible by
Mm.
Arthur Miller. And it takes place in Salem in 1692 and deals with the witch trials. And there's a farmer who gets caught up in all of this and gets accused of being a witch. He's not a witch. Not that there's anything wrong with being a witch, let me just add. But anyway, back then they thought it was. And so he gets accused and he's just like, this is such BS. And he says, the line is, we are as we always were,
Mm.
only naked now. And it makes me think of this Pluto and Aquarius thing. In other words, Americans have a particular idea that, by the way, we have exported to the world about how wonderful we are, how what a free country we are, how magnanimous and generous and altruistic we are. Um, Apple pie, mom, Chevrolet, baseball, Pledge of Allegiance, Star Spangled Banner. I mean, did I sum it all up? And yet, if you just scratch the surface,
Yeah.
that's not who we are at all.
That's
And the
not who we
question
are at all.
is, right. So I was taking this sort of from the micro of Donald, right, to the macro of the country. And so the opportunity that we are presented with, I suspect, is now that we are starting to see who it is we really are, we get to choose. Is this, I mean, whom do we want to be? Do we want to be who we really are? Because the evidence would indicate that that is exactly who we want to be, because otherwise we wouldn't be that. Or do we want to be true to the flowery language of, a more perfect union? Do we really want to explore what we mean by when we say a more perfect union? I suspect that part of what revolution will be people's eyes opening to the lies that they've been told and the constructs under which they have lived their lives. Like, for example, white people thinking, well, I may be poor, but I'm white. And who else is white? Ooh, Trump is white and he's rich. He's got a golden toilet seat. So, and we have this American individualist idea of that individualism is a good thing. And that if I just work hard enough, I can get to where he is. That's a false construct. But we are wedded to it. Our system is built on it. Our system is built on money
Yeah.
the having of money of a certain landed male class, which is what 2025 would like to bring back. They want to bring us back to our origins because that is
And
our origins. And we
Yes.
have to decide, do we want to be those origins, or do we want to look at the language of the Constitution and the other documents that we have and say, these guys may have been bad guys in a lot of ways, and a lot of them frickin' were slave owning sons of bitches. But they all came to Earth and here to came to this country with an amazing ability to envision things. And I
Mhm.
think that they envisioned with their higher selves, if not their actual, you know, regular white guy selves, the possibilities that a country like ours could hold for a
Mhm.
more perfect union. I love the fact that the word is more, that more is inserted in there. And so I mean, it's all very interesting to see how things will go for him. But he, in some ways, again, he's the microcosmic example of who all of us are as a country.
Yeah, and with that Pluto return that has happened in the last few years, what we are in the midst of is rebuilding something new. And yes, they're all in that position of power right now in 2025, and we're gonna bring it back. You can't bring something back.
Well, wait a minute. You can't bring something back. So there's that. But also, are we, astrologically speaking, because I don't know, are we already in this rebuilding process, or are we not there yet? Are we still in
We're
the
we're, we're still in the muck. We're
We
still
have
in
to,
the muck.
right, because physics
Right,
tells us that
right.
two things cannot exist
Yeah.
simultaneously at the same time. So something has to be raised to the ground before
I
something
think that things are still in the process of being
born down.
destroyed.
Hmm.
But I do think that there are seeds
Hmm.
that are when I say, we're beginning, there is those beginning shoots,
Hmm.
those little seeds that are being planted. Which ones of them will grow? Which ones won't? We're not in a position, we don't have enough space yet. It's sort of like you think about the cycle of the moon, the phases of the moon. At the new moon, we can't see anything.
Hmm.
We don't know where we are. And that's the same like with the Pluto returns, like Pluto together. At that point, we can't see anything. And it has to be quite a few degrees out before we start seeing what has begun
Which
at that
speaks to the
planet.
fact that that's why this is a 20-year cycle. I had my brother on last week or a couple of weeks ago on one of my Sunday conversations, and we were talking about that, the fact that we are not promised the promised land. We're not promised the victory. All we're promised is the battle, the journey, and we do what we do and we stay in it, knowing that we may not see the fruit of that, but we do it for who comes after us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Pluto is in Aquarius for 20 years, but the full
Mhm.
Pluto cycle is 248 years.
Exactly. We'll all be dead and buried and
We'll all be long gone by then.
and maybe have come back and left a couple of times in addition. Yeah, that's
Right.
interesting.
Right. Yeah, I mean it is a really fascinating period of time to be in the middle of, and we all need to figure out what our steps forward are going to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
What is it that's our individual responsibility in this time?
I think the
And
very first thing is to make a decision as to whether you are going to uh, stay awake. I could say stay woke, and I will say stay woke because to me, woke is not a pejorative, but whether we're going to stay awake because the temptation will be to go to sleep.
well, when Uranus moves into Gemini, let's see, Uranus is going to move into Gemini in July, early July. That's going to be a big wake up call. That's going to be a big,
July,
uh,
okay.
Uranus has been moving through Taurus for since 2008, I think. And the wake up has been around Taurus kind of things, waking up to women's issues have been a
Mhm.
big thing while Uranus has been moving through Taurus, and earth issues, and our food supply even. When Uranus moves into Gemini, there's going to be a real awakening around our intellect and around communication.
Mhm.
I'm really curious about how that's going to play out. But on an individual level, looking at where these things are in our own charts is going to really give us information on where we are awakening, where we are being empowered. Uranus going into Gemini is bringing Uranus into 47's 11th house, which is community, the people who support him.
Oh,
That's going to be a big wake up call to him. Uranus is going to go into his 11th house. Those who support him might not anymore. There might be a real
they'll see him
shift.
more clearly.
Yes, yes, yeah. And that's getting very close to his Uranus return, which, he's getting old. He's old.
You're not getting old fast enough. But
No.
speaking
Sure.
of speaking of those people, I mean the other side of it, of course, is, and I've written about this, not in this Substack, I think my last one. Uh, what one of the things that the rest of us are called upon to do, and I can't necessarily say that I've arrived at this place yet. So, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all, which is that some of us are going to have to really resist the urge to say, I told you so.
Yeah.
This is why Black women say, I'm over here drinking my water and minding my Black business. It's the same thing as saying, we told you. Because I think to fight the urge to say, we told you so, can conceivably open a door, and be an invitation to come home to frickin' sanity, But that's not the easiest thing. I mean, I wrote about love the other day, and I was not feeling a couple of weeks ago, and I was not feeling in a particularly lovey-dovey mood. And so when the cards popped up, and there's the sun, oh, and there's a heart, I'm like, are you kidding? So I had to write what I was given, and write my way to metabolizing what
Ah.
I was given. And I think a lot of us are going to be called to do that. For example, the whole issue of racism, and people say, oh, it's not a thing. We're post-racial. And then you see all these things happening, all the dismantling of everything. You have to say to yourself, wait a minute, maybe we're not so post-racial.
Well,
And
anybody who thinks that isn't paying any attention
but,
whatsoever.
but remember that the culture rewards people for not paying attention.
True.
You're rewarded for that, for not seeing race, for not calling it out, you're rewarded. And if you're Black and you bring it up, well, that's not the done thing. It's dangerous to do that. It's dangerous to do that. I mean, I don't
It's
care.
either dangerous or don't you hear you're too sensitive?
You have a chip on your shoulder.
Oh
That's a,
yeah, okay.
I love that one. A chip on, yeah. Mm. So hopefully people are going to wake up, and we will not be living in what I like to call a fun house. I think this country, the experience of living in this country, I think for everyone, but I think people of color are more conscious of it. It's a fun house experience where you walk into the fun house and it's fun for a minute, right? Because you see the mirrors and you're all distorted, but then you're trying to find your way out. Have you ever gone to one of those country fair, and then you
Yeah.
can't, and you've got your kid with you and they're loving it. But meanwhile, you can't find your way out. And it feels like that. And when you call attention to the fact that this is distorted, this is odd, this is not the reality that I'm used to, that I thought reality was, and you get told, no, this is really, this is life. And
It
I'm
is.
so glad. One of the things that I really feel about these transits and what's going on now is that I am so glad that more and more people are saying, I don't want to live in a fun house.
Yeah, yeah,
As hard as what the reality is, at least it's real, and I'm not dizzy, and the ground is solid underneath me, and I can make decisions from that place instead of all of this, you know,
Right. Yeah.
broken
It,
mirror that we've been
it
given.
definitely feels like an awfully lot of layers are getting torn off,
Mhm.
and we are certainly seeing what's been going on all along.
All along. Well, that was the thing I was going to bring up. I brought up the crucible and then I forgot what I was going to. We are as we always are, as we always were, only naked now. And we get to decide whether we like this nakedness or whether we want to remake ourselves in the image that the founders, at the very least, paid prescient lip service to by putting the word more in front of perfect union.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity that we're going to be presented with.
I think you're right. And there's parts of me that are very hopeful, like this could
Mhm.
really tear off the Band-Aid and things could, turn in a different direction or just, yeah, get destroyed and we can come back from a
But not
new
tomorrow,
space.
not the next
But
day,
not tomorrow,
in the
not the next
fullness of
day,
time.
in the
And
fullness.
I think it's important for us to remember that 20-year period and also that 248-year period, that
Yeah.
the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, but slowly.
So,
And it's not necessarily always going like that. It can boomerang back like it's doing right now.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
ideally, with that boomeranging back, physics hopefully will make it go that much farther towards justice once we get on the right side of things.
Yeah, it's so fascinating just thinking about the scope of history and our lives. We kind of take these little lives we have for granted in some ways, like this is just the way it is. But, we were born in a particular place in a particular time, and how much our lives are the result of the larger forces outside of ourselves, which, astrologically are the outer slow moving planets.
Mhm.
You can look at the chart from that perspective. The inner planets are our little personal lives. And then there's the social planets that really speak to kind of the more local neighborhood environments that you live in. But then those outer planets, that really speaks to the cultures we're born into, the political systems that control so much of our lives. And we don't think of that very often.
No,
And
and I
well,
think
now we have to.
right, we do. And I think we choose to come here when we come here to provide a service. I mean, it's all about moving us up. Have you read the book Sapiens? Sapiens?
No.
My God. So he does this retrospective. It's brilliant and very disturbing of of human beings from our primate beginnings. And here's the thing, what I always say, we are primates.
We sure are.
And we're always sort of pulled in the direction of our primate selves, which is about self-interest, right?
Mhm.
Purely self-interest and staying alive and all of that. But what human beings, as we are now sort of evolved into, have the benefit of is we have these good angels. We've got
Mm.
our primate self, and then we have this awareness of our good angels. And our lives are just this constant struggle. Whom do we listen to? What do we listen to? Now, historically, you look at different civilizations, and often they've chosen the primate side, which is why civilizations fall.
Yeah.
And we are so blessed because we have the example of that, and we have still the angels on our shoulder and an opportunity to say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Let me try and do this. And that's why I say, for people who wake up late and say, "Oh my God, I didn't know who I was voting for. I didn't real." We have to say instead of "You stupid idiot, we told you." We have to instead sort of practice it in the mirror, saying, you know, "Welcome home. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome home to your community. Welcome home to your mission." in this life.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know
Right. Until we know it. That's
until we
right.
know it. And then our responsibility has got to kick in.
That's right. To stay awake, to
Yeah,
stay awake. Yeah. And then act from that place.
yeah, yeah.
Well, this has been really good. Really good. I'm really excited to see what the spring and summer hold. I always say revolution. It's not like the peasants sat around and ate their little crust of bread and drank their cold cup of tea and said, "Well, there's no TV to turn on. Why don't we go have a revolution?" It's not like that. Things move slowly, incrementally, but faster than we think, faster than we think. And we came here for such a time as this, I think.
And with Uranus moving into Gemini, that's the other thing. Gemini is a fast moving
Hmm.
sign.
Hmm.
When Uranus hits that line, I think there's gonna be a lot of fast awakening.
Yes, and the thing is, people do awaken at different levels. It's not like we're all going to go to bed one night and then wake up. It's for some people, they'll get it, they got it before. Some people, they'll get it today. Some people, they'll get it in a year or two. But it is happening. I think the momentum is forward
And
moving.
we also wake up in layers. Like
So we
one
wake
little
up in
part
layers.
wakes
Yeah.
up, and then a month later, oh wait, there's more on top of that, and
That's right. That's right.
it's quite a process.
Yes. But you know what? Happy to be here for it.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, what's the alternative? We better be cultivate gladness in being here, you all. If you're
That's
not
right.
feeling it, cultivate it, grow it, water it, feed it.
Right. And, being an example to the people around us of not giving up
That's right.
or giving in or, oh my God, the absolute nothing's going to ever be okay again. It's like, there's hope. There's plenty of hope.
I
It's just
sometimes will have viewers who will say, "Can you give us some hope?" Well, what did Gandhi say? Be the change that you'd like to see in the world. You know, um, darkness may spend the night, joy comes in the morning. I could come up with a zillion quotes. We are each our own universe, and we are each responsible for our own happiness, right? And our own experience of life in these bodies.
fascinating life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to see what's coming in, and we will have you back. Um, Probably, once some of this energy has played itself out, that would be good. Maybe in the summer to come back and see what's coming in for the fall.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting spring through
Yeah,
early summer. There's gonna be an awful lot to pay attention to, an awful lot to stay awake about, and an
good.
awful lot of work to do.
Well, I'm here for it. I know you are too. And all
Thank
of
you.
my viewers, thank you all for watching. That Lori, thank you for being here. And
Thank you.
what do they say in Spanish? Continua la lucha, which
Mm,
means, the battle goes on. And so we're here for it in the
yeah.
best way. All
All
right.
right.
I'll see you
Thank
all
you.
during the week. Take care.